I enjoyed my overall experience of creating this virtual library on Google. Um, as I scroll down, I had separated the books into their genres. So I have contemporary realistic fiction, fantasy, historical fiction, informational bibliography, literature representing diverse populations, poetry and science fiction, and traditional literature slash folk tales. My favorite books, I'll just say my favorite books per genre. My favorite book would have to be Frindle. I love the idea of creating your own vocabulary and um, encouraging students to explore their vocabulary. And I think this book really helps with creative writing and just thinking outside of the box. For fantasy, I personally love The Lightning Thief. Um, this series by Rick Riordan is my favorite series I've ever read. Um, and I think it would be a great book to use alongside learning about Greek mythology. Obviously, The Lightning Thief is not completely accurate, so I wouldn't put it with historical fiction um, or with folk tales because it's not quite accurate. But I think it would be a nice addition to learning about Greek mythology and get kids more excited about learning about a different culture or um, religion in a culture. For historical fiction, my favorite would be The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. I think it's honestly a beautiful story about a Jewish boy and a German boy and their relationship and how they don't see each other as, oh, this is a Jewish boy and oh, this is a German boy. They see each other as just two boys who, are on different sides of a fence but just want to have fun and learn from one another. And I think that's just a very beautiful story. Informational bibliography, my favorite would be What Do You Do with a Tale Like This? I remember reading this book several times as a child, and I learned a lot about like the different body parts of animals and what the purpose of these um, organs do or what the body parts do. Um, so that would be my favorite book in this section. For literature representing diverse populations, I would have to choose The House on Mango Street. It's very relatable for me. I remember reading it in high school, and even though I didn't grow up in a lower class primarily Mexican population, there's a lot of things that I can relate to and that my parents can also relate to as they actually did live in a lower class society. So this would probably definitely be my favorite out of this genre. For poetry, I actually quite enjoyed Jabberwocky. I wouldn't say it's my favorite out of the three, but I really liked how this book portrayed Jabberwocky because it's a quite grim poem, and it's a little dark, but this picture book kind of keeps it light and airy. Because even though I looked at the age recommendation for this poem and it said around like second grade, but I still felt like it was a little grim for a second grader to read. However, this picture book kind of takes the poem and makes it a little bit more fun, a little bit more enjoyable, um, and not as concerning to read. For science fiction, my favorite will always be A Wrinkle in Time. Science fiction can also go alongside of fantasy as well, but I chose to put it in the science fiction genre. This book is by far my favorite. I've read it at least 3 or 4 times, and I have the original version of it and a graphic novel version of it. So this is definitely by far my favorite book, and I really like the whole. I like the way Emily Smith has taken science and religion and combined the two. I think she blended them both really well, even though I know it was very controversial when it was released. I quite enjoy the blend of the two topics. And then for traditional literature slash folk tales, my favorite would probably have to be The Tale of Peter Rabbit. I remember growing up and reading this book and the mischievous things that Peter would do, like going into the farmer's garden and trying to catch or eat the carrots. And I remember him getting stuck in the fence and just crying my eyes out because he couldn't get out, but eventually did get out at the very last minute. But I really love that book because it definitely helps a child to explore their own curiosity. But at the same time, as an adult, you can come alongside them and help them explore their curiosity in a safe way that's not going to get them into trouble. I wouldn't say I have like a least favorite book. The books that I have chosen, I have all read either growing up or have read during this course. So I wouldn't say that there are any books that I don't like. If anything, I would say that there are some that definitely interest me more than others, but the books I've chosen, I like them all equally, for different reasons for sure, because they all add something new and fresh to my repertoire or my library of books. Which books would you use with your future students? Wow. Honestly, I would probably use them all. Well, because I want to be a kindergarten teacher, I probably wouldn't be able to use some of the thicker books like the novels. I'd probably stick to picture books and maybe quite small short stories, but I would love to add poetry because I think it's definitely fun for children to learn how to rhyme and how to build little short poems. So I definitely would love to incorporate these 3 books for sure into the learning or the lessons that I would be teaching. Definitely would choose to use We Are Different, We're the Same, because that talks about inclusivity and diversity. Let's see, I'd also use Penguin Day. It's like Penguin Day kind of reminds me of Planet Earth, those documentaries, Planet Earth, but it just focuses on penguins, and I think penguins are really fun to learn about. I enjoyed learning about penguins when I was a child, and I know that children would love to also continue to learn about penguins. Let's see. I think that's about it. Oh, Little Red Riding Hood is always a great story as well. Definitely can use that in a lesson about stranger danger. And I think, during light reading time where I just read stories to the children, I could probably incorporate some thicker books. Because I definitely would want them to use picture books like We're Different, We're the Same on their own. I would want them to read that on their own, as well as like Hop on Pop, Jabberwocky, The Crocodile. But maybe thicker books, just trying to introduce them to more traditional literature. I'd probably do that, like just do a reading time where we kind of just discuss like a chapter a week or something, or a day, whatever. So I'd probably incorporate Charlotte's Web into that and Little Red Riding Hood. Let me see. Yeah, I think that's about it, because I think all the other books are a bit too mature for the kindergarten, first grade age. But yeah, so this is how I would use these books in the classroom. And honestly, I quite enjoyed building this library. I probably would actually keep building up this library for future reference so that I can go back when I'm creating lesson plans and see, okay, what kind of book do I want to include in this lesson if I want to do an integration of children's literature into a science or math lesson or something along those lines. So yeah.